Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Launchpad and our live launch coverage of SpaceX Transporter 7 launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Zach. I'm the founder and host here at TLP, and we're glad to have you joining us here. Take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. People tuning in all around the world. We got Sally from Serbia, Devs in Kansas, BTWs in Melbourne. We've got Malik in Florida, Pat's in Australia, Tyler's in Compton, Sharon's in India, and we got Monty in California. It's great having you all joining us here as we are now just over 13 minutes and counting until launch of another SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying over 50 rideshare satellites to orbit. Correction, not launching from Slick 40. We're launching from Slick 4E at Vandenberg Space Force Base as we continue towards today's launch. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live throughout today's stream. Just make sure you're doing so. Of course, it is a launch day, which means if you use promo code launch day, you can get 10% off of everything over on the TLP shop. So definitely take a moment and check that out. Global shipping is available, and we've got sizes from extra small through 5XS. So stuff for everyone. But we're glad to have you here. SpaceX is getting underway here. We'll listen into mission control in just a couple of minutes. One thing we did want to make a note just for the programming of today's launch, deployment is going to take just over 2.5 hours for all of the payloads to be deployed, and we've got a very busy day here down at Starbase. We've got the launch of Juice coming up in a few hours. We've got undocking of Cargo Dragon from the ISS, and we've got Starship that we are going to be doing some on-site coverage for today. So we're going to not be staying live through all of the deployment, but you can follow along with SpaceX doing so over on their social medias. If you're just joining us, though, we are now counting down just under 12 minutes and counting until launch. We're going to listen in to SpaceX for an update on the rocket. They've been proceeding with propellant load of the Falcon 9 vehicle as it continues going for its 10th flight, booster 1063-10. Its last flight was in February with Starlink Group 2-5. Its first mission took place in November of 2020, launching the Sentinel-6 satellite. It was also the booster that launched the double asteroid redirection test back in November 2021. Let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control.
You are looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 set to lift off at 11:48 p.m. Pacific time from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Jesse Anderson. I'm joining you from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, just a few hours south of our launch site. Tonight, we are launching SpaceX's Transporter 7 mission. This is our 7th dedicated small-sat rideshare program launch. This mission will mark our 24th launch for this year and 224th mission of all time. Now on this flight are 51 spacecraft, including CubeSats, microsats, hosted payloads, and orbital transfer vehicles carrying spacecraft to be deployed at a later time. Now, it might be worth mentioning that weather is currently red for liftoff at this time, but moving forward with our T0 of 11:48 p.m. Pacific time to see if we can find some good weather. Now, there will be a total of 36 deployments made between 2 deployment sequences. The first deployment sequence will begin around the T+1 hour mark and will last for approximately 20 minutes. We are expecting to lose ground station coverage partway through the first deployment sequence, so only some of our deployments will be visible today. However, when we gain coverage or ground station coverage, we do expect to have telemetry and hear audio confirmation over the nets. The second and last deployment will happen at the T+2 hour and 35 minute mark after additional second stage burns. And speaking of payloads, on board the Falcon 9 today, we have a main payload located at the top of the stack for our customer, Tubitak Uzay. The Imedja spacecraft is the 4th satellite manufactured by Tubitak Uzay, which is the space branch for the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey. Imedja in Turkish means collaboration or collective work, as it was a project that was worked on by several institutions and holds great significance in the Turkish culture. Now with that, here's a video highlighting our main payload.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. T-minus 9 minutes, 48 seconds, and counting until launch from Slick 4E at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. We did just hear there that currently weather is trending red for launch, but they are continuing with propellant load, hoping that they will get a clearing in the sky and be able to launch. If not, they will delay today's flight and go for another attempt for the next window, but they are proceeding towards that T0 in 9 minutes 20 seconds from now. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the like button, share out the stream, let people know that we do have another SpaceX Falcon 9 launch on our way. If you want to know more about today's mission, you can head over to tlpnetwork.com, click on launches. That's where you can see our launch control, or you can click the link in the description or the chat. That's where we have our detailed mission briefing about today's flight, breaking down the Falcon 9 rocket, the Merlin engines, its development, and more. And that's also where you can see all upcoming flights, previous flights that launched on this day, and more. We're also super excited that TLP, we're sending our very own payload to the moon in partnership with Astrobotics, and we'd like to invite you to be part of it. You can send your name for free, your family's name, dog's name, your favorite teacher, by heading over to tlpnetwork.com/lunex1. That's where you can send your name for free, or you can consider upgrading your payload and actually sending a photo or a video for a small fee on board our payload to the lunar surface. We invite you to join us there. More info is going to come out about that mission over the coming year, and we're excited, of course, to bring you full live on-location launch coverage of that as well. Now coming down to 8 minutes and counting until launch, over 50 payloads on board today's Falcon 9 rideshare mission. Let's listen back in.
Srivastava, a structures engineer here at SpaceX. On your screen is a live view of the Falcon 9, which is a reusable two-stage rocket, which rolled out to the pad and went vertical early this morning. Falcon 9 is kind of like two rockets in one, with the first stage and the second stage stacked on top of one another. A rocket can be defined as the engine, or the M1D rocket engine, or the vehicle, which is propelled by the engine, in this case, the Falcon 9 rocket. For a sense of scale, the two-stage Falcon 9 stands about 70 meters tall, which is slightly taller than a 21-story building. What you're seeing on your screen are the four main parts that make up the rocket: the first and second stages, the black composite inner stage, which connects those two, and the payload fairing at the very top. Speaking of the fairing, the 51 spacecraft on board the second stage today are safely enclosed inside the large pointed structure at the very top of the rocket, which is the payload fairing. It's job to protect them until the vehicle is outside of the Earth's atmosphere, at which point the two fairing halves separate to expose them to the vacuum of space. Right below the fairing, we have our second stage, which houses our single Merlin vacuum engine, or the MVAC engine, which will propel our payloads to their eventual destination in space. On today's mission, you might notice something a bit different, which is that we are flying with a shorter nozzle extension attached to our MVAC engine. Going forward, our teams plan to use this shorter nozzle when we don't need as much performance to get the payload to its final destination.
Stage 1, RP1 load complete.
But don't worry, the larger nozzles are not going away forever, and we still plan to fly the full-sized MVAC nozzles on missions that require a more significant amount of thrust from Stage 2, or ones that contain a heavier payload. So keep an eye out for that after stage separation. Moving on further down the rocket, below the second stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage. The inner stage connects the two stages and houses the center pusher that allows the first and second stages to separate during flight. It also houses the MVAC nozzle, which I was just talking about. And below that, we have the first stage, which we usually refer to as the booster. The first stage makes up the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle and has 9 M1D engines at the bottom. Those 9 Merlin engines do the bulk of the work to get Falcon 9 off the ground and up to the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Stage 1 is the primary part of Falcon 9 that we recover, refurbish, and reuse for multiple flights, which allows us to bring down the cost of regularly launching rockets. At around 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage will separate and make its way back to Earth to attempt a land landing at landing zone 4, which isn't too far from the launch pad. For those of you who are keeping track.
Thanks, President, for strong back recheck.
For those of you who are keeping track, today's mission marks the 10th flight for this particular booster, which has previously supported the Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich mission, DART, and 7 Starlink missions. For today's mission, unlike typical Falcon 9 missions, we'll be performing a single engine entry burn and a 3-engine landing burn on the first stage after stage separation. This is due to the change of second stage engine performance with the shorter nozzle. So switching up the number of engines we light up during these 2 milestones on the booster during descent will allow us to more efficiently land on LZ-4. We've previously performed similar types of burns, most commonly on the Falcon Heavy side boosters. This will, however, be the first Falcon 9 first stage to perform these burns with this changed engine configuration to land back on land. It's also worth noting that we are predicting slightly higher winds during our landing attempt, but hopefully the weather will cooperate with us. So be sure to keep an eye out during both entry and landing burn to see if you can see the difference based on how many engines are lit up. At T-minus 3 minutes and 33 seconds, the vehicle is healthy and we are currently tracking no issues. However, the weather is currently a watch item and red, but we are planning on moving towards our planned T0 of 11:48 p.m. If for some reason we do not launch today, we have another opportunity tomorrow at the same time.
Stage 1 lock load complete.
Our goal with these missions is to provide small satellite operators competitive pricing, increased flight opportunities, and flexibility. We're flying some really cool payloads on this mission, including several different types of Earth observation spacecraft, collecting greenhouse gas emissions data, hyperspectral imaging, student research projects, and orbit-changing vehicles. It's pretty incredible how even the smallest satellites can make meaningful contributions to take care of planet Earth and our efforts to visit other worlds. And we're looking forward to providing a great ride to space for these 51 payloads on board today in just a few minutes from now. Now at this point, we have completed LOX loading on the first stage. We're coming up on LOX loading completion on the second stage in a few seconds here at the T-minus 2 minute mark. And again, we are keeping our eye on the weather for T0.
Stage 2 lock load complete.
There's that call out that we were waiting for. Liquid oxygen loading is now complete on the second stage. That means that Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of fuel and kerosene and liquid oxygen. And now we are clearing out the liquid oxygen line on the transport erector, and that is why you see those white clouds that are taking over your screen there right now. And there you can see a better view of the venting. Next up will be Falcon 9 in startup. That's when the internal flight computers will take over the launch countdown. And that is at the T-minus 1 minute mark.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Good call out. Now we're just waiting for the final call from the launch director.
Launch director on countdown 1. Hold, hold, hold.
Launch abort has started.
Now, as you just heard the launch director, we have had a hold, hold, hold on the countdown.
As launch director on countdown net, a manual hold was called due to weather constraints.
And as you just heard there, we have held T-minus 28 seconds due to a weather violation. They were monitoring that, hoping that they'd have a chance to get off the ground here tonight, but unfortunately does not look like they are going to. They are now safing the rocket and will be beginning propellant offload, and they will get to try this all again tomorrow. If it was your first time here, though, make sure you engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. We hope you'll join us in just a few hours for our live coverage of the launch of JUICE, but that's going to do it for us here at TLP from TLP's mobile studio in Starbase. We'll see you in a few hours. Bye-bye.